In a panic, she hugged a stranger, not knowing. He was a millionaire CEO and couldn't forget her smell. In a moment of panic, she hugged a total stranger to protect herself from the man who once broke her. What she didn't know is that the man she clung to wasn't just anyone. He was one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. And from that one touch, he couldn't forget her scent, or the way she made him feel something he thought was long dead. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. Sophie's heart nearly stopped. She had just stepped into the ballroom, heels clicking softly against the marble floor, her green eyes scanning the room. And then she saw him, Daniel. There he was, tall, clean-shaven, same smug half-smile, arm casually wrapped around a woman Sophie didn't recognize. Her chest tightened as if someone had pulled a string inside her ribcage. After 3 years, she thought she was done flinching at the thought of him. She wasn't. Everything around her blurred, the chatter, the music, the clinking of glasses. Her breath caught. Daniel hadn't seen her yet, but he would. Any second now, and Sophie couldn't handle it. Not here, not tonight. Not like this. She scanned the room, desperate, and then she moved, on pure impulse. Her hand brushed her emerald satin dress as she strode toward the nearest figure, someone standing alone near the bar, back turned slightly, a towering presence in a dark navy suit. No time to think. She stepped in front of him and hugged him, firm, desperate, both arms around his chest, as if clinging to a lifeline. Ethan Blackwood froze. He wasn't a man who froze often. Usually it was the other way around. People paused when he entered rooms. People adjusted themselves when he looked their way. But this was different. He looked down. A woman, beautiful, breathless, shaking slightly, was wrapped around him. Her scent hit him before anything else. Jasmine and vanilla. Not cheap perfume, not overpowering, just soft, warm, haunting. She pulled away, cheeks flushed, clearly embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, eyes flicking behind her. "I just needed a moment." He followed her glance. A man with perfectly gelled hair and the polished arrogance of entitlement was walking toward their direction. Ethan's sharp eyes caught the hesitation in the woman's face. Her breathing still wasn't steady. "Ah, X?" he asked quietly. Her eyes shot to his. "Yes." Ethan gave a slow nod. "You want him to think you're with someone?" She hesitated, then nodded. Without another word, Ethan took a single step forward, closed the space between them again, and gently placed a hand on the small of her back. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he approached. "Well, well," Daniel said, voice too smooth to be genuine. "Sophie, I didn't expect to see you here." Sophie swallowed hard. "I could say the same." Daniel barely glanced at Ethan, but his smirk faltered slightly when he noticed the hand at Sophie's waist. "And this is—" Before Sophie could answer, he could. Ethan turned smoothly. "Ethan Blackwood," he said, extending a hand with that effortless authority people either admired or feared. Sophie's date. Daniel blinked, the name registered, fast. Ethan Blackwood, the Ethan Blackwood, billionaire CEO of Blackwood International, ruthless in negotiations. Private in life, rarely seen at events like this unless he had something to gain. Daniel's jaw tensed. "Of course, I've heard of you." "I'm sure you have," Ethan replied with a dry smile. Sophie stood still, every nerve on edge, pretending this moment didn't feel like an alternate universe. Daniel chuckled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You move on quickly?" Sophie tilted her head, voice steady for the first time. "It's been 3 years, Daniel. That's not quick. That's healing." Ethan glanced at her just for a second. There it was, that quiet fire behind her soft voice. She wasn't just beautiful. She had layers. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Well, good seeing you. Then he walked away. Just like that. Sophie let out a shaky breath the moment he was out of earshot. "You okay?" Ethan asked, watching her carefully. She gave a half-laugh, half-sigh. "I didn't plan that, I swear." Ethan looked amused. "It's not every day a stranger hugs me like their life depends on it." "Desperate times," she muttered, running a hand through her dark hair. "I'm sorry, that was insane. I don't usually hug strangers like that. You didn't assault me, you surprised me, and that's rare." For a moment she looked into his eyes. Piercing blue-gray, calm, but curious. Sophie stepped back, awkward, now that the adrenaline had worn off. "I should go. I already made a fool of myself." He didn't move. "Don't." She looked up. "Stay for a drink. You saved me from a night of pretending to be interested in overpriced wines and boring speeches." She laughed. "Soft?" "Surprised. You're charming for someone who looks like they fire people before breakfast." "I do," he said flatly, "but only the ones who deserve it." She tilted her head. "You're serious?" Ethan nodded once. "Always." That made her laugh again, truly this time, not out of nerves, but because something about him disarmed her. "I'm Sophie, by the way, Sophie Harrington." "I know," he said, sipping his drink. "Your ex said your name, plus I saw you when you walked in." "You saw me?" He didn't answer immediately. "I noticed you," Ethan said quietly. "It's hard not to." Sophie's breath caught. Suddenly the room didn't feel so suffocating anymore. Suddenly she wasn't thinking about Daniel. Suddenly she wondered what would have happened if she hadn't hugged him at all. But Ethan, he was still thinking about the hug, about her scent, the way it wrapped around him and lingered, jasmine and vanilla. It hadn't left his senses yet, and he already knew it wouldn't for a long time. And as Sophie turned her head slightly to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, Ethan realized something else. He didn't want her to leave, but Sophie's phone vibrated. One look at the screen drained the color from her face. And just like that, the moment shattered. Sophie's fingers trembled as she held the phone. The name glowing on the screen was one she hadn't seen in over a year. Call from Mom. Not Mom, as in the warm, gentle voice she remembered from childhood. This was her mother's name, the one Sophie now only associated with silence, disappointment, and a distance that felt colder than any winter she'd ever known. She hadn't blocked her, but she had stopped answering a long time ago. Ethan saw the shift in her eyes. It was subtle, but he noticed things, always had. It was part of what made him one of the most feared minds in business. She was somewhere else now, far from this ballroom, far from him. "You okay?" he asked quietly, stepping just slightly closer without crowding her. Sophie looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten he was still standing there. Yeah, just someone I wasn't expecting to hear from." Ethan didn't push, but he waited, watched. She silenced the call and turned the screen over, face down on the bar. "I'm sorry, that was rude," she said, voice forced light. "You don't have to pretend," Ethan replied. Sophie blinked. "Pretend what?" "That you're okay." That made her pause. No one ever called her out like that, not directly, not kindly. She exhaled slowly. "You don't even know me?" "Not yet," he said. "But I know what it looks like when someone's hurting." Her green eyes lingered on his face longer than she meant to. "Are you always this observant, or am I just painfully transparent?" "Little of both." She smiled, even if just a little. He had this way of seeing her without making her feel exposed. "You're not like I expected," she said softly. "And how did you expect me to be?" "I don't know. Colder, like one of those boardroom sharks who speaks in spreadsheets." Ethan chuckled. "I have spreadsheets for that, but I don't usually get hugged by strangers at gala events." "Touché." They fell into a quiet rhythm, the crowd around them swelling but somehow feeling distant. She let herself lean slightly against the bar, not out of weariness, but because, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to hold her breath. Ethan glanced at her glass. "You haven't touched your drink." "I wasn't sure if I was staying," she said honestly. "And now?" She paused, looked around the ballroom again. The music was louder now, more people arriving. Her ex was nowhere in sight. But her phone, it sat there on the marble like a ticking time bomb. Still, she reached for the glass. "Now I'll stay," she said. Ethan nodded, satisfied. "Tell me something about you." "Sophie Harrington?" She gave him a sideways glance. "Like what?" "Something real, not work, not small talk." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "That's a tall order for a stranger." "You hugged me," he reminded her. "We passed small talk 5 minutes ago." She laughed again. "Fair point." She thought for a second. "I was supposed to move to Paris once," she said finally. "Had the bags packed, the visa ready, the apartment picked out. It was all lined up." "What happened?" She looked down at her fingers on the glass. "I stayed for him. Daniel." Ethan's jaw flexed slightly, but he said nothing. "I told myself it was love. That sacrifices were part of it, that my dream could wait." She exhaled slowly. "But then, it just never happened. And one day, I woke up and realized I wasn't even sure who I was anymore." Ethan's voice was low. "And now?" "I'm trying to find that version of me again," she said, almost in a whisper. Ethan looked at her like she was more complex than any negotiation he'd ever had. "You ever think about going now? To Paris?" "Sometimes," she said, sipping her drink at last. "But life, it doesn't always wait, does it?" Before Ethan could respond, her phone vibrated again. Louder this time. She flinched. "Same name, Mom." Ethan noticed. "You should take it." "I shouldn't," she said quickly, standing straighter. "It's not urgent." But her voice betrayed her. "It might be," Ethan said gently. Sophie hesitated, long enough for the call to go to voicemail again. A soft chime this time. A message had been left. She didn't want to hear it, but her fingers moved anyway, unlocking the phone with a shaky breath. She pressed the message and held it up to her ear, turning slightly away from Ethan. His gaze remained fixed on her, watching the color drain from her face as the voice played. "Sophie, it's Mom. Please don't hang up. It's about your father. It's bad. I know we haven't talked, but I need you to come home. Please." The voicemail ended. Sophie stood frozen, staring at nothing, the ballroom spinning around her like a carousel of strangers. Ethan didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. She slowly turned back to face him. Her voice was barely there. I have to go." He nodded. "Do you need a ride?" "No, I need time. I need to think." Her eyes met his again, really met his this time. And there was something new there. Gratitude, confusion, maybe even a flicker of something more. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick, "for earlier, for playing along, for being kind." "Sophie," he started, but she was already backing away. "I don't know if I'll see you again," she said almost apologetically. And then she was gone, slipping out of the ballroom like a shadow, leaving behind nothing but a half-empty glass and the soft echo of jasmine and vanilla. Ethan stood still, gaze fixed on the door she'd disappeared through. And for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or hostile acquisitions. He was thinking about a woman who hugged him like her heart was breaking, and who had just walked out of his life before he could ask her the one question that burned in his chest. "Who hurt you so badly that you don't think you deserve to be saved?" The taxi pulled up in front of a modest, white-painted house just after midnight. Sophie hadn't been back here in over a year, not since the last fight, not since the silence. The porch light was still on, same wind chimes by the front door. Same flower pots with half-alive petunias her mom never remembered to water. She stared at the door for a full minute before stepping out. The jasmine scent clung faintly to her dress, but now it was just a reminder of everything she'd walked away from hours ago. Ethan, his voice, his eyes, that quiet strength, still lingering in her mind. But this wasn't about him now. This was about a family she wasn't sure she still belonged to. She rang the doorbell, even though she still remembered where the spare key was. It opened faster than she expected. Her mother stood there in a worn sweater, face lined deeper than Sophie remembered, eyes red. "Sophie," she breathed. Sophie stiffened, arms crossed automatically. "I came," she said simply. Her mother stepped back. "Come in, it's cold." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something baking, or burning. The familiarity of it made Sophie's chest ache. She stepped inside slowly. "He's asleep," her mother said quietly, leading her to the kitchen. "But he's not doing well." Sophie lowered herself into a chair. What happened? Her mother busied herself with the kettle, even though neither of them asked for tea. "The doctors said it's his heart. He collapsed this afternoon. I found him by the shed, said he was just feeling dizzy. But then he blacked out." Sophie's hands curled around each other in her lap. "He always worked too hard," she whispered. "I told him to rest," her mother said, her voice cracking. "But he never listens, not even to me." Silence stretched between them. Not comfortable, not hostile, just full of things that neither wanted to say. "You could have told me sooner," Sophie said finally. "I didn't know if you'd answer." "You never tried." Her mother turned, teacup trembling slightly in her hand. "You stopped talking to me, Sophie, after Daniel left, after you told me I should have just married him because I was lucky someone like him wanted me," Sophie snapped, eyes flashing. Her mother flinched. "I didn't mean it like that. You said it. I was angry, scared. I didn't want you to end up alone." Sophie rose from the chair, the old pain bubbling back to the surface. "So you'd rather I stayed miserable in a fake life just so I wouldn't be alone?" Her mother looked older in that moment. Smaller. "I didn't know how to help you. I saw you fall apart and I panicked. I thought maybe if I pushed you hard enough, you'd get back up." "I did get back up," Sophie whispered, voice shaking. "You just weren't there to see it." Neither of them spoke for a long time. The kettle began to scream. "Ooh." Her mother moved to turn it off, and the sound died, leaving a heavy silence. "I'm sorry," her mother said softly, back still turned. Sophie stood there, unmoving. Her eyes flicked to the photos on the fridge. One of her dad in overalls, smiling with grease on his face. One of the three of them, before things got complicated, before silence replaced love. She swallowed hard. "I want to see him," she said. Her mother nodded and led her down the hallway. The bedroom was dark, save for the soft glow of a nightlight by the dresser. Sophie stepped in slowly. Her father lay there, asleep, pale but peaceful, oxygen tube running gently across his face. One hand resting on his chest, he looked smaller than she remembered, fragile. Sophie approached the side of the bed. For a long moment, she just stared. Then she whispered, "Hi, Dad." His eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. She sat by his side, carefully taking his hand in both of hers. "I'm here now," she whispered. "I'm sorry it took me so long." His fingers twitched slightly around hers, not fully awake, but not entirely asleep. A tear slipped down her cheek, and for the first time in months, Sophie let herself feel everything. The regret, the anger, the love, all tangled into one messy knot she'd been holding in too long. Her mother stood quietly in the hallway, watching from the doorway, eyes full of guilt and something else, maybe hope. Sophie gently laid her head next to her father's arm, not caring about the makeup smudging or the dress wrinkling, just needing to be close. And in that moment, a small part of her wished she hadn't walked away from Ethan so quickly. Because she didn't realize until now, she didn't want to be alone in this. But back in the city, Ethan hadn't gone home. He was still sitting in the back seat of his car, parked in front of his high-rise condo, staring at the spot where her perfume had touched his suit. And when his driver asked if he was okay, Ethan said something he hadn't said in years. "I don't know." Ethan Blackwood wasn't used to being unsettled. He'd built an empire on control. Every number aligned, every risk calculated, every meeting cut down to the minute. Even in chaos, Ethan thrived because he created the chaos. He was never caught in it. Until now, until her. The penthouse was quiet, dead quiet, the kind of silence that used to soothe him after long days filled with demands and expectations. Tonight, it felt oppressive. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand, and stared down at the glittering city. From this height, everything looked manageable, predictable, small. But something in his chest was off. That hug still clung to him like heat on skin. The faint ghost of jasmine lingered, wrapped in a warm sweetness, still caught in the fibers of his jacket, which now hung off the back of the leather chair. He hadn't even put it away. He never left things out of place, until now. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, undoing the perfect slick. Something about tonight had fractured the image he'd spent years curating, not in a way that embarrassed him, in a way that haunted him. He didn't even know why she hugged him. Not fully, just that she was hurting, and he was there. But it wasn't pity he felt. It wasn't confusion either. It was something stranger. She saw him, not as Ethan Blackwood, the CEO, but as a man who just happened to be standing in the right place at the wrong or right time. And for reasons he couldn't name, that mattered more than it should. He walked to the sleek black bar, set the whiskey down, and stared at the untouched drink like it might explain what the hell had just happened to him. His phone buzzed. Wes, his assistant, his fixer, his human buffer between him and the rest of the world. Wes, your meeting with DeLuca's team is at 8 a.m. Do you need a prep summary? Ethan glanced at the time. 1:42 a.m. Usually he'd be reviewing briefs by now. Everything in his life followed a rhythm. But tonight, he hadn't opened his laptop. He hadn't even taken off his shoes until 5 minutes ago. His thumbs hovered over the screen. Then, without fully understanding why, he typed something else. Ethan, I met someone tonight. The reply came fast. Wes, is that a code for I'm acquiring another company, or do you actually mean a person? Ethan gave the faintest smile. Ethan, an actual person. Wes, you met someone voluntarily? Ethan, she hugged me. Wes, what? Ethan set the phone down. He couldn't explain it through texts. Not how the warmth of that hug had slid under his skin, not how it had grounded him for a moment in a way no deal ever had. He walked toward the jacket still hanging on the chair, slowly reached into the pocket. Nothing unusual, but the scent. He lifted the fabric to his face, then stopped himself, suddenly aware of how ridiculous that felt. Still, it was there. Soft, sweet, her. Ethan didn't even know her last name. He didn't know what she did, where she lived, or why her eyes had carried so much pain. But her story mattered. And he wanted to know it, not because he was curious, because he cared. And that was terrifying, because Ethan Blackwood didn't care about people, not like this. His phone lit up again. Another message. Wes, want me to find her? The old Ethan would have said yes, without blinking. Run a name, face recognition. Event registration list, cross-check against every database they had. But he paused, because doing that would feel like owning the moment, and for once, he didn't want control. He wanted her, on her terms. Ethan sat down, elbows on his knees, letting the silence press in again. The city buzzed outside. But up here, it was just him and the space she'd left behind. For years, Ethan had believed his solitude was a strength. That being untouchable made him powerful. But now, for the first time, he questioned whether that was just another kind of loneliness disguised as discipline. He didn't know her. But he missed her. How do you miss someone you met hours ago? Maybe because it wasn't just the hug, It was how she looked at him. Really looked. Like she didn't care who he was or how many zeros were in his bank account. Like he could have been a stranger on the street, and she still would have needed him in that exact moment. And he liked being needed, not for what he had, but for who he was, who he could be. He leaned back on the sofa and stared at the ceiling, trying to shake the feeling, but it stayed. Then, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. His heart jumped in a way he didn't recognize. A message popped up. "Hi, this is Sophie. I just wanted to say thank you for tonight. I didn't get the chance to explain, but I really appreciated what you did." Ethan sat forward, reading the message again. Sophie. He stared at her name, committing it to memory like it was something precious. He typed a reply, then paused. He didn't want to sound too eager. He didn't want to scare her off. He didn't want to make her think he was anything other than grateful she thought of him at all. Then another message appeared before he could hit send. "Also, I might have left something behind in your jacket pocket." Ethan's brow furrowed. He turned, walking back to the chair. Reaching carefully into the inner pocket, his fingers closed around something small, soft, fabric. He pulled it out slowly. A delicate folded handkerchief, carrying that same soft vanilla note, tangled with a whisper of jasmine, the scent that had pulled him back to the ballroom every time. Ethan's hand closed around the fabric, and for the first time since she left, he smiled. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting soft patterns on the old wooden floor of her childhood bedroom. Sophie lay awake, curled under a faded comforter that still smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. The house was quiet, too quiet. She could hear the faint hum of her mother's kettle in the kitchen and the slow rhythmic breathing from her father's room down the hall. But Sophie's mind wasn't here. It was back there, back in the ballroom, back in that unexpected embrace. Ethan. She still didn't know what had come over her. Why she hugged him, why she didn't run the second she realized what she'd done, and why. When she did finally walk away, it felt like she'd left something important behind. He didn't have to help her. He didn't even ask questions. Just played along, calm and steady, like he'd done it 100 times before, but somehow made it feel real. She closed her eyes, remembering the way his hand rested gently at her back, grounding her. Not possessive, not performative, just present. It was the kind of touch that told her she wasn't alone. She hadn't realized how much she needed that, not until it was gone. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen face down. She hadn't checked it since texting him the night before. That message had been a risk. She'd written it 3 times before sending, deleted one version where she rambled, another where she tried to sound cool, and finally, the one she sent, simple, honest, uncertain. "Thank you." And the second message, the one about the handkerchief. She hadn't meant to leave it behind. It was something she always carried, a habit from her grandmother, but maybe part of her had left it on purpose, a tether, a thread, something she could use to see if the moment they shared still lived in his mind too. The phone buzzed, her breath caught. She grabbed it quickly, but it wasn't him. Her mom. "Can you help me with breakfast?" Sophie let out a quiet breath. She set the phone down again and rose from bed, still wearing the oversized t-shirt she found in the bottom drawer last night. Her hair was a bit of a mess, but she didn't care. She passed by her father's door on the way to the kitchen and peeked in. He was awake, barely, eyes half-lidded, tired but alert enough to meet hers. "Hi, sweetheart," he rasped. Sophie's throat tightened. "Hey, Dad," she said, stepping inside. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. His hand reached for hers, weak but warm. "You look just like your mom did when we first met," he said with a faint smile. Sophie smiled back, but it was tinged with sadness. "You always say that." "It's always true." She brushed a wrinkle from the edge of his blanket. "How are you feeling?" Like someone sat on my chest and left a tractor behind. She gave a soft laugh. That's poetic. Painful poetry, he added. They sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands. I'm glad you're here, he whispered. Sophie looked away, blinking fast. Me too. I know it wasn't easy. She didn't answer right away, just pressed her lips together. I never blamed you, Sophie, he added gently. Not for leaving, not for any of it. Her voice cracked. Then, why didn't you say anything when Mom... I should have, he interrupted softly. That's on me. I didn't want to choose sides. But I should have protected you, too. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm sorry I stayed away, she said. I'm not, he replied. She looked at him, startled. Because you came back. That's all that matters now. And just like that, years of tension cracked open inside her. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. And for Sophie, that was enough to breathe a little deeper. Later that morning, as she helped her mom prepare breakfast in silence, her phone buzzed again. She froze. This time, it was him. Ethan. Ethan, you left something behind. I found it. Sophie's heart stuttered. She stared at the message, thumb hovering above the screen. Another message followed a few seconds later. Ethan. Not just the handkerchief, something else. Her breath caught. She typed quickly. Sophie. Like what? There was a long pause. And then, Ethan. That's the part I'm still trying to figure out. She read it once. Then again. Then a third time, holding back a smile. Her mom glanced over. Something good? Sophie slipped the phone into her pocket. I think so. She looked out the kitchen window as sunlight broke through the clouds, casting light on the backyard swing her father built when she was 12. She hadn't sat on it in years. But today, she might. Because something inside her, something long buried, was beginning to stir again. Hope, curiosity, and a fragile, rising possibility that maybe, just maybe, that hug wasn't the end of the story. But across town, Ethan sat staring at a name his assistant had just forwarded him from the gala guest list. Harrington. Sophie Harrington. He didn't search for her, but someone on his team had, automatically, as part of the post-event protocol. He told himself he wouldn't use it. He told himself this was different. But his finger hovered over the contact, because now that he knew her name, he wasn't sure if he could stay away. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early. He never did that. Normally, he scheduled his life in precise increments, 3-minute elevator rides, 10-minute briefings, meetings never exceeding 45 minutes unless it was a merger. Efficiency was his religion, but today, he waited. A quiet little cafe on the corner of 9th and Granger, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a flower shop, a place he'd passed 1,000 times but never stepped into until Sophie suggested it. Nothing fancy, she'd texted. I just want real conversation, no noise. So here he was. Dark jeans, a charcoal button-up, sleeves rolled to the forearms. No suit, no entourage, just Ethan, the version even he rarely saw. He sat near the window, hands clasped loosely around a cup of black coffee he hadn't touched. The door chimed softly, and there she was. Sophie stepped inside, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her expression was shy. Unsure, but her eyes met his immediately, green, vivid, and searching. Ethan stood without thinking. Hi, she said, voice soft. Hi, he replied, his usual calm barely hiding the fact that his heart had just skipped a beat. She slid into the seat across from him. He sat back down, his gaze never leaving her. They sat in silence for a few seconds, not awkward, just real. You came, she said, almost surprised. I said I would. I didn't think you'd be the type to follow through on coffee with strangers. You're not a stranger, he said. Sophie tilted her head. You barely know me. I know how you looked at me when you were scared. I know how you held on like you were trying not to fall apart, and I know how it felt when you let go. That stopped her. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, and what did it feel like? Ethan looked at her, steady. Like I didn't want you to. Sophie swallowed hard. A hint of pink rose in her cheeks. She pulled out a folded napkin from her purse. The handkerchief. Clean. Pressed. You found it, she said, placing it on the table between them. I did. You kept it. I thought about sending it back. Then I thought, maybe I didn't want to let go of it either. Their eyes met again. The tension between them wasn't forced. It was charged. A delicate thread pulled taut between two people who didn't quite understand what was happening, but knew it mattered. How's your father? Ethan asked gently. Sophie exhaled. Resting. He's stable now, but it was a close call. I'm glad you were with him. I almost wasn't, she admitted. If I hadn't gotten that call, I would have just gone home, pretended everything was fine, like I've been doing for years. He studied her for a moment. You don't strike me as the pretending type. I wasn't, she said. But it's easier than admitting you're lost. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Are you? Sophie looked down at her coffee. Stirred it once, then met his eyes. I was, but then I met someone who looked at me like I wasn't broken. His voice was low. You're not. That's the first time I've believed it in a while. They both sat with that. No need to fill the space, no desire to run from it. Sophie smiled faintly. You're not what I expected. I get that a lot. You're softer than you look. Ethan chuckled. Don't let the board of directors hear that. She laughed too, not nervously, but freely this time. Something between them relaxed. Then, after a beat, she asked, Why did you come, Ethan? He looked out the window for a moment, thinking. I don't know, he said honestly. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. Sophie blinked. That's honest. I've built a life around being untouchable, he said, but ever since you hugged me, something's shifted. You broke into a part of me I forgot existed. She stared at him, stunned. And I don't want that to go away, he added. Sophie looked down, biting her lip. I'm not exactly ready for something big, she whispered. My life's a mess right now. I'm not asking for big, he said. I'm just asking for coffee, for now. Her eyes flicked back to his, and something in her finally let go. A smile crept across her face. Soft, real. For now, she echoed. They talked for nearly 2 hours about music, childhood, their worst dates, favorite smells, the last books they actually finished. He told her how he once burned an omelet so badly the fire alarm shut down his entire building. She told him how she once walked out of an interview halfway through because the boss reminded her too much of Daniel. They didn't touch once, but something between them moved closer all the same. By the time they stepped out of the cafe, the sky was streaked with gold. A quiet wind blew past them. I should head back, Sophie said. Ethan nodded. Can I see you again? Sophie hesitated, but then, yes, I'd like that. They stood there, facing each other, the air thick with unsaid things. And just as Ethan stepped back to let her go, Sophie reached forward, not to hug him this time, but to touch his hand, just briefly, just enough. And then she turned, walking down the street with a little more steadiness than when she arrived. Ethan stood still, watching her disappear into the crowd. Only this time, he didn't feel like a stranger in his own life anymore. But just as he reached for his phone to send a message, it buzzed before he could type. Unknown number, a photo, a candid shot of him and Sophie at the cafe, taken through the window. Followed by one line of text, you always had a weakness for pretty distractions. Ethan stared at the photo on his phone, unmoving. It was a clear shot, high resolution, slightly tilted, snapped through the window of the cafe he and Sophie had just left that afternoon. The photo showed them mid-conversation. Seated close, Sophie laughing, Ethan leaning slightly forward. He knew that look on his face. He wasn't performing, he wasn't analyzing, he wasn't hiding, he was open. And someone had seen it. The message beneath the photo made his blood run cold. "You always had a weakness for pretty distractions, no name." No emojis, no timestamp, just a direct shot across the bow. His eyes narrowed as he saved the image, then forwarded it to Wes. "Ethan, trace this, now." Not 30 seconds later, his phone rang. "Got it," Wes said, not bothering with hello. Numbers unlisted, burner pinged off a Midtown East tower, real close to Vaughn's headquarters. Ethan exhaled slowly. Of course. There was silence on the other end of the line, but Ethan knew Wes was already connecting dots. Celeste Vaughn. He hadn't spoken to her in nearly 9 months. Hadn't needed to. Their relationship, if it could be called that, was more of a cold alliance. She was all steel and silk, beautiful, calculated, ruthless. They'd met at a tech summit 4 years ago. She liked power. He embodied it. For a while, they entertained the idea of being something more. But there was always something missing. Warmth. He ended it the moment she tried to make him choose between her and the company. Not in words, but in intention. Celeste didn't like being second. She never lost. Until Ethan. "Should I respond?" Wes asked carefully. Ethan shook his head, even though no one could see him. "No, let her watch. But I want to know who took the photo and how it got to her. She's not subtle, Ethan. If she's poking, she wants something." "Yeah," Ethan muttered, running a hand down his face. "She wants to remind me I'm not invisible." "She's baiting you." "I know. You biting?" Ethan paused, looking back at the photo. Sophie's face, relaxed, glowing. He hated that someone turned that private moment into a weapon. "No," he said finally, "but I'm going to protect what she's aiming at." Meanwhile, across the city, Sophie sat cross-legged on her childhood bed, laptop open in front of her, a bowl of strawberries on the side table. She'd been trying to write for over an hour, an article for a small freelance gig. But the words wouldn't come. Her mind kept drifting. Back to the cafe, to Ethan, to the way he listened like she was saying something important, even when she wasn't sure she was. And to the way he never tried to fix her pain, just stood beside it, steady as stone. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected him. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The cursor blinked on an empty document. She sighed, shut the laptop, and reached for her phone. No new messages. But she smiled anyway, remembering the last thing he sent her. Not just the handkerchief, something else. She could still feel the flutter in her stomach when she'd read it. The way her heart had stirred, scared, hopeful, alive. She was starting to let her guard down, and that terrified her. Her email pinged. She glanced at it. Subject: from unknown private mail. At first, she ignored it, probably spam, but something in her gut told her to open it. There was no greeting. No explanation, just one line. "Do you know who you're getting involved with?" Below it, a PDF attachment. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. A compiled document. Clippings, headlines, a few black and white photos. At the top, Ethan Blackwood, profile, scandals, allegations. Sophie's heart dropped. The first page was a screenshot of a tabloid article from 2 years ago. Ruthless Blackwood crushes startup, leaves dozens jobless overnight. She scrolled. Another page, a photo of Ethan with a woman draped on his arm. The caption, "Power couple? Ethan Blackwood and investor Celeste Vaughn, seen leaving gala together." More images. Business disputes, cold, formal statements, rumors of manipulation, of using influence to shut down competitors. Nothing concrete, nothing illegal. But it painted a picture, or tried to. Sophie sat back, the room suddenly feeling colder. Was this real? Who sent this? And more importantly, why now? Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Ethan, still thinking about you. Hope your dad's doing better." She stared at the screen, torn between instinct and fear. She liked him. She trusted how she felt around him. But this This was a reminder that she didn't really know him, and in her world, not knowing people had cost her before. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she reread the email, then deleted it. Not because it didn't matter, but because she wanted to ask him, not a stranger hiding behind a burner account. Later that night, Ethan sat in his penthouse, staring out into the dark skyline, whiskey glass untouched in his hand again. His phone buzzed. Wes. Confirmed, someone from Vaughn's team. Likely one of her PR advisors. The message was sent from a dummy IP. Ethan, she's watching. Wes, she's warning. Ethan didn't reply. He stood walking to the window, shoulders tense. He wasn't afraid of Celeste. But he was starting to feel something worse. Fear that Sophie would believe her. He'd spent years building a reputation of strength, distance, control. But that wall he'd built, it wasn't made of steel. It was made of stories people told about him, some true, most twisted. And now Sophie had walked straight into the fire, and he had no idea if she'd stay. And the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Sophie stepped into the polished hallway of Blackwood Tower's top floor, her heartbeat heavy in her chest. The silence up here was different. Too still, too clean, like everything had been designed to intimidate, and maybe it had. But she wasn't here for architecture. She was here for answers. The walk to Ethan's penthouse door felt longer than it was. Her fingers hovered over the doorbell for a moment before she finally pressed it. A few seconds passed, then the door opened. Ethan stood there in a dark sweater and jeans, barefoot, his hair tousled like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. No suit, no sharp lines, just him, stripped down, real. His expression softened instantly. Hey, Sophie swallowed. Hi, is now okay? He stepped aside without hesitation. Of course. She stepped in slowly. The space was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, soft lighting. Minimalist furniture in cool tones. It was elegant but sterile, beautiful, yet distant. Very much like how she'd imagined him before she actually met him. You want something to drink? He offered. Tea? Water? No, she said gently. I'm okay. They stood across from each other, the city twinkling silently behind him. I got an email, Sophie said finally, her voice low but steady. Ethan didn't blink. I figured you might. It was a lot, she continued. Articles, accusations, stuff from your past. He exhaled slowly. Celeste. You knew it was her? I didn't have to guess. Sophie crossed her arms, but not defensively. She was bracing herself not just for his answers, but for what she might feel hearing them. Why would she send it to me? Because she doesn't like seeing me happy, Ethan said without pause. And she especially doesn't like being replaced. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Were you together? Ethan shook his head. Not in the way she wanted. We were two people who liked power, control, the illusion of connection, but that was never real. Not like... He stopped himself, took a breath. Not like this. She let the silence sit for a moment, then spoke again. Some of the stuff in the email, it wasn't just about her. It was about you, about how you run your company, the people you've hurt, the lives you've affected. His jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. I've made hard calls, Sophie, not all of them perfect, but most of what she sent you is twisted. The media only ever sees the surface, and sometimes the surface is all they want, Sophie nodded. And the company you shut down? They were stealing client data and selling it. I stopped them before it became a scandal that could ruin hundreds of families. But yeah, people lost jobs, and I still carry that. Sophie walked slowly toward the window, her back to him now. You don't seem like someone who regrets much. I regret everything that hurt someone who didn't deserve it. She turned around. You really mean that? Ethan stepped closer, nodding. I do. She watched him carefully. There was something raw in his eyes now. a kind of quiet that came from years of holding too much and saying too little. "I didn't come here to judge you," she said softly. "Then why did you come?" Sophie hesitated. "I wanted to hear the truth from you, not from a stranger with a hidden agenda, not from an email attachment. I wanted to look you in the eye and know if I was wrong to trust you." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "And I still don't know," she admitted, "but I want to." A pause. "I've spent years second-guessing myself," she added, voice beginning to shake. "With Daniel, with my family, with everything. I finally found someone who made me feel seen, and it scared me." Ethan moved a step closer. "I'm not here to scare you." "But you do," she whispered. "Why?" "Because I don't know how to believe in someone anymore." His voice dropped. "Then let me earn it." She looked up, tears welling in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "What if I'm not ready?" "Then we go slow," he said. "No pressure, no expectations." She searched his face, waiting for a crack, a tell. Anything that suggested this was all too good to be true, but there was nothing. Only sincerity. Only him. Sophie took a deep breath, as if letting go of something heavy inside her. "Okay." A simple word, but it meant everything. Ethan nodded, and a quiet relief washed over his features. They moved to the sofa, sat side by side, not touching, but close. Sophie spoke first. She said I was a distraction. "She's wrong," he said. "You're the first thing that's made sense in a long time." Sophie smiled faintly. They talked for another hour, about his parents, her old dream of living in Paris, his fear of waking up one day and realizing he'd built everything except a life that actually meant something. She told him she hadn't laughed like this in years. He told her he hadn't wanted to be known like this in even longer. And then, just as she leaned into the cushions, brushing his arm without realizing, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. They both looked down. One new voicemail from unknown number. Ethan felt something shift in the air. Sophie tapped it once. The transcript preview showed only one line. "If you think you know who Ethan Blackwood really is, you're wrong." Her chest tightened. Ethan's face changed, calm but colder. "Let me guess," he said. "Celeste." Sophie didn't answer. She just tapped play. Sophie tapped play. The moment the voicemail began, the voice on the other end sent a chill down her spine. Smooth, polished, icy, Celeste. "Sophie Harrington," the voice said with cool amusement. "You don't know me, but I know you. I've seen you, that soft laugh, the way you touch his arm like he belongs to you. So sweet, so naive." Ethan shifted beside her on the couch, tension climbing into his shoulders, but Sophie held up a hand. "Don't say anything." "I'm not calling to warn you, Sophie. You're a grown woman. Make your own choices. But since Ethan won't tell you the truth, I thought I'd give you the version he conveniently leaves out." There was a pause on the recording. "Then, I loved him once. Or maybe I just loved the idea of taming him, of being the only person who could reach him. Spoiler, no one ever does, not really. He lets you get close enough to feel like you matter, then shuts the door before you can walk through." Sophie's grip on her phone tightened. "He told me once, after we had a deal go south, that loyalty is a currency people spend too quickly, that when people get too close, they become liabilities." Ethan leaned forward now. "That's not how I said it." But Sophie didn't look at him. She was still listening. "He's not evil. He's not a monster. But he is calculated. He won't hurt you on purpose. He'll hurt you because he thinks he's protecting you. And by the time you realize it, he'll already be gone." A long silence followed. Then Celeste's final words. "I just thought you deserved to hear that from someone who used to think she was the exception too." Click. The message ended. Silence filled the room like fog. Sophie sat motionless, staring at her phone screen, her chest rising and falling just slightly faster than before. The air around her felt heavier, like her past, Ethan's past, and whatever they were becoming, had just collided in the middle of his immaculate living room. Ethan finally broke the quiet. "She's not wrong about everything," he said, voice calm but pained. "But she wants you to believe the worst version of me." Sophie looked at him now, her eyes guarded. "Was that really something you said? That loyalty is a currency people spend too quickly?" He nodded once. "Yeah, in business, in deals. When trust gets you blindsided, but not with you." "Are you sure you can separate the two?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan opened his mouth, but no answer came right away. That pause was long enough to scare her. She rose from the couch slowly, her arms folded across her chest. "I'm trying, Ethan," she said, "but I don't know if we're safe. Not from her and not from him. And I can't ignore the feeling that one day you'll just shut the door, without warning." "I wouldn't." "But you have," she said, eyes locking with his. "You've built walls so high you don't even see them anymore." "I've let you in more than anyone." "I didn't come here to be more than anyone," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I came here because I thought maybe, just maybe, you were different." The pain in his expression was quiet but real. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "That's not enough," she whispered. He stood now too, facing her. "What do you want to know? Ask me anything. I'll answer." She shook her head. "It's not about facts, Ethan. It's about how you live, how you move through the world, and who gets to matter. I need to know if I'm just another name you'll delete from your phone the second I become inconvenient." He stepped closer. "You're not." "I want to believe that," she said. "I do." But her voice cracked, and she hated that it did. Ethan's hand hovered, almost reaching for hers, but he stopped. Instead, he said something she wasn't expecting. "I'm scared too." She blinked. "I've built something that no one could take from me. Not the market, not competitors, not the people who smiled at me while sharpening their knives. But I don't know how to build this, not without messing it up." Sophie looked away. "I've been broken before," she said, "and every time I thought I could trust again, it cost me more than I was ready to lose." He stepped forward, closer now. "Then we both have reasons to run." "But I don't want to run," she whispered. "Then don't." He finally took her hand. It was small in his, but warm, alive. They stood there, eyes locked, breathing in unison, the city behind them shimmering like 1,000 unspoken things. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," Ethan said, "but I can promise you this: I won't shut you out. Even when it's messy, even when I don't know what I'm doing." Sophie searched his face for any trace of a lie, any hesitation. But she didn't find it, just fear, and honesty, and something very close to hope. Her voice was quiet. "Okay." And for the first time since that night in the ballroom, she meant it. But just as their hands started to lower, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from an unknown number, different from the one Celeste had used. She opened it. There was a photo attached. Her, outside her parents' house, taken from across the street. The caption read, "Careful who you let into your home." He's not the only one with secrets. Sophie's blood turned cold. Sophie's phone slipped slightly in her hand. She stared at the photo, her standing outside her parents' house earlier that morning, taken from across the street. The lens was long, intentional. Someone had been watching. This doesn't feel like Celeste's style. This is something else. And the message beneath it sent ice down her spine. "Careful who you let into your home. He's not the only one with secrets." Ethan was at her side in an instant, reading the screen. "That's your house?" She gave a small nod, lips slightly parted. "Yeah, from this morning. I just grabbed the mail." "I thought I felt something, like eyes." Ethan's jaw tightened, hands curling slightly. They were close. This isn't a bluff. They were watching you. Sophie took a shaky breath, walking toward the massive window behind him. The skyline of the city looked calm, but she didn't feel calm. She felt exposed. Unsafe, like her world had just cracked again. Ethan followed slowly, careful not to rush her. "Sophie, what is this really about?" She gripped the edge of the window frame, Her shoulders were shaking now, just slightly. "There's something I never told you." He waited. "I didn't just run from Daniel," she said softly. "I ran from someone else, someone before him." Ethan stayed quiet. His stillness was his signal. "I'm listening." "His name was Lucas Monroe. We were together for 2 years. No one really knew him. He was charming, low profile, said all the right things. At first he felt safe." She glanced back at Ethan, her voice hardening. But he wasn't. She turned away again, as if needing to put distance between herself and the memory. "He didn't hurt me physically, not once. But sometimes I wished he had, because then I'd have something to point to, proof. Instead it was slow, subtle, the kind of control that makes you question if you're just overreacting." Ethan moved closer but didn't touch her. "He didn't like my friends, said they weren't real. I stopped talking to them. Then he wanted my passwords. For safety, he said. He wanted to protect me from the internet." Sophie laughed bitterly. "He even made a spreadsheet of every guy who'd ever commented on my photos, called it a risk tracker." Ethan's hands curled tighter. "I tried to leave 3 times, she continued, voice trembling now. "The last time, I didn't tell anyone. I packed a bag, booked a room under a fake name. But when I walked out of work that day, he was already across the street, just watching me." Ethan's voice was quiet. "What did he do?" He smiled. "That was the worst part. He smiled and said, 'You're not finished yet.' Like he was just waiting for me to understand that I belonged to him." She finally turned around to face Ethan. "I filed a report, but there was no incident, no crime, just dread." "He moved cities 6 months later. I never heard from him again." Ethan's voice dropped lower. "Until now." Sophie nodded. "I thought it was over. Then Daniel came along, and I poured myself into that because I thought a new relationship would erase the damage." Her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "But it didn't. And now this photo, that caption, it's him, Ethan. It's not Celeste. It's not some gossip leak. It's him." Ethan walked toward her and took her hands. They were ice cold. "You should have told me," he said gently. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she whispered. "Not broken, not scared." "You're not broken," he said. "You survived. You walked out. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you stronger than you know." Her eyes filled, but she blinked it back. "He took years from me. He won't take another minute." Sophie leaned her head against his chest, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, not to protect, but to anchor. After a while, she pulled back just enough to speak. "We need to do something. I can't put my parents in danger." Ethan nodded. "I'll handle it. I've got security teams. I'll make a call tonight. Your parents will have someone watching the house within the hour." "And the photo?" she asked. "Can you trace it?" "I'll send it to Wes. Burner number or not, someone left a footprint. They always do." She nodded. But something still sat heavy on her chest. A feeling she couldn't shake. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that he still has this much power over me." "He won't after tonight," Ethan said. Sophie studied him now, eyes scanning his face. "You believe me?" she asked, without hesitation. "I believe you. Not the photo, not the threats. You." Something in her cracked open again. Not with pain, but with relief. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to say that, and mean it. A few minutes later, while Ethan made a secure call on the balcony, Sophie sat on the couch and tried to calm her racing thoughts. She glanced down at her phone. Another notification. Her chest tightened. One new message. Different number again. This time, no caption. Just another photo. It was her father, asleep in his favorite armchair. The picture was taken from outside the house, through the living room window. Her hands began to shake. Ethan walked back inside at that exact moment, his face darkening as he saw the image. "Is that—" "Yes," she choked. "It's my dad." Ethan snatched the phone and stared at the image, fury simmering just below the surface. This wasn't a message. It was a line crossed. Sophie clutched her chest. He's there. Lucas is there right now. Ethan was already moving. I'm calling in the team. Sophie grabbed his arm. What if he doesn't want to hurt me? What if he wants to hurt them? Then we stop him before he gets the chance. She looked into Ethan's eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone in her fear. But the voice in her mind, the one she'd buried long ago, whispered, "You're not finished yet." The house was dark when they arrived. Ethan had insisted they go together. 2 of his private security guards were already stationed in an unmarked SUV across the street. Another had done a full sweep of the perimeter. Still, Sophie's fingers trembled as she held her house keys. Her childhood home no longer felt like a refuge. It felt like a stage. And he might still be watching from the wings. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Ethan asked gently. Sophie nodded. "I've spent too many years afraid. Tonight, I need to end it." She unlocked the door, pushing it open slowly. The house was silent. Inside, her mother sat beside her father, who dozed quietly in his recliner. The soft hum of the television was the only sound. When her mom saw her in the doorway, she stood quickly. "Sophie, what's wrong?" "I just needed to check on you," Sophie said, managing a tight smile. "We thought we saw something outside." Her mother frowned, but nodded. "Everything's fine here, just a quiet night." Ethan gave a small nod and stepped into the hall. Phone to his ear, quietly directing his team. Sophie moved toward her dad, heart easing just slightly at the sight of his chest, rising and falling in sleep. But she knew the danger wasn't over. It wasn't about what Lucas had done. It was the power he still had, the fear he still controlled, and she was done letting him keep it. They didn't sleep that night. Sophie and Ethan sat at the kitchen table, nursing cups of coffee that had long gone cold. The guards remained parked outside. Every few minutes, Ethan would glance at the window, alert. "I used to dream about this," Sophie said. "What I'd say to him if I ever saw him again. How strong I'd be." "You still can be," Ethan said. She looked at him, then out into the dark. "I don't know if I need to see him. I think I just need to stop hiding from what he left behind." Ethan nodded, not pressing, not pushing. "You know," she said, voice quieter now, "when I first hugged you, I wasn't looking for someone to save me. I just didn't want to fall apart in front of him. I know. But now I'm realizing something." "What's that?" She met his eyes. "I wasn't falling apart. I was waking up." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "What happens next?" she asked. "Whatever you want," he said. "We're not writing his story anymore. Just yours." The next morning, Sophie walked into a small private police station outside the city. She filed an official report. She gave them the photos, the messages, the name, Lucas Monroe. She answered every question calmly, precisely. When they asked if she wanted to press charges, she looked straight at the officer and said, "Yes." No more fear, no more silence. Afterward, she and Ethan stood outside in the sunlight. For the first time in days, she felt the warmth of it on her skin. She took a deep breath. It felt like the first one in years. 2 weeks later, Lucas was formally identified and detained in a neighboring city. He had been using a fake name and working under-the-table jobs. Surveillance matched him to the vehicle spotted near Sophie's home. The photos on his phone confirmed the stalking. And Sophie? She didn't cry when they told her. She didn't break. She just exhaled long and quiet and finally let go. Ethan waited outside the courthouse the day she gave her final statement. He wore no suit, no watch, just a hoodie and jeans. The man who once measured time and profit margins now waited just to see her walk out of a room. When she emerged, he smiled and opened his arms. Sophie ran to him. They stood there, arms wrapped around each other, not as strangers, not as rescues, but as two people choosing each other after everything. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I am now," she said. That night, they sat on the rooftop of Ethan's building, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. "Do you ever think about that first night?" she asked. "All the time," he replied. "Do you believe in fate?" Ethan thought for a moment. "No, I believe in choices." "Then why did you choose me?" "Because you didn't pretend." She turned to him. "And why are you still choosing me?" Ethan looked into her eyes. "Because with you, I don't want to be anyone else." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. But they were different now, not from pain or fear. They were from freedom. "I don't know what the future looks like," she said. "Then we make it up as we go." He leaned in, gently, and kissed her. Not urgently, not desperately, just real. Weeks later, Sophie walked past the cafe where they'd had their first real conversation. This time she was alone. She paused, looked through the window, smiled. Inside, a young woman nervously hugged someone at the bar. Sophie chuckled to herself. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Sophie, remember when I hugged a stranger and accidentally fell in love?" A second later, a reply buzzed back. "Ethan, I don't remember being a stranger, Sophie. That's because you weren't, not really. And now I know. I'm not the same woman who walked into that ballroom." She stood there for another moment, then kept walking. Stronger, lighter, unfinished, but not afraid of the pages ahead. Back at Ethan's penthouse, a photo sat in a small frame on the kitchen counter. It wasn't formal, just a candid Sophie laughing, Ethan looking at her like the world was falling away. Underneath it, in small handwriting, were the words, "Sometimes the people who hold you when you're breaking are the ones who teach you how to rebuild." The end. So now I ask you, have you ever walked away from someone only to realize they were exactly what you needed? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this story touched your heart in any way, leave a like, subscribe for more stories like this, and rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. I'd love to know how it made you feel. You matter, your voice matters, and your presence here means more than you know. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.